How's it going? Welcome back, my wise ones, to a fantastic video today as we are finally here. We're at the point of getting the best pirate video game of all time, but we're getting it again. Wow, what do you know? Is that because creativity has completely died and corporations like to rehash ideas? Well, in this case, I'm not against it because Black Flag absolutely slaps. Now, usually I would say I'm kind of sick and tired of where we are right now as an industry, not just in gaming, but in entertainment in general, where we can't actually create new ideas. Corporations are hedging their bets by just bringing back old IPs over and over again. This year is kind of the year of the remake. We've got Halo, we've got Black Flag. It's safe to say that we are just constantly getting recycled material instead of new stuff, and honestly that's a shame because when gaming can be original, when there are new IPs invented, that's when we can truly find unique thematic storytelling that says something special. But today we're here to take a look at Black Flag Resynced, or Assassin's Creed Black Flag Remake. And today I'm going to touch on my Black Flag Resynced review, talk about other reviews, give you my prediction for what this game is going to end up scoring on Metacritic. That's what I like to do with major video games coming out, and especially ones that I'm going to review myself. Now, I have actually been lucky enough to play some of this at a press event, so I can actually talk about some of the stuff that I've played, and I will be doing my early access review very shortly. If you like video game early access reviews, philosophical videos, and deeper analysis into the themes of video games, subscribe, become a wise one.
Okay.
So I'm going to go into all of the positives and negatives of the Black Flag Remake review in my upcoming early access review. But I am going to list some positives and negatives here, but I'm going to save most of that for my full review. But I am going to talk about the overall impressions, what other people are saying, other press, and some of the big controversy around this game, and if it's actually going to be worth it or not for you, okay? Because video games, if you haven't noticed, especially in the last couple of weeks, it's kind of crashing as an industry, and that's simply because we're not getting enough new ideas. Shareholders are pressuring the massive companies behind gaming, and finally the live service collapse has kind of bitten the investors and the game developers playing it safe. But honestly, even creative ideas will die day one now. So it's just very, very difficult to make a successful game because they've bloated the market. They've made it all about spectacle, AAA, amazing graphics, constantly chasing fidelity, and everything lasting a long, long time, which means it takes so long for games to be made, which means when a game does fail, there's a huge cost to that. And then, of course, just the dystopia that we're living in, people being laid off their work, getting replaced by machines. It's pretty great times to be a gamer, okay? And we do have to fight against that. And also, we need to make sure that people working in the game environment are protected, because it's kind of crazy how many people are getting laid off, especially at Xbox and stuff like that. And if it keeps going like this, we're not going to have any new ideas. So that's my little rant out of the way, because it's hard not to be upset about the current state of gaming right now when, you know, so many big games are coming out, but a lot of people choose not to play games anymore. And that's not because they're not interested or something, because the pricing for hardware and the games themselves are just increasing so much that it's hard for people to keep up with the newest and biggest games for AAA stuff. And this is where I do actually support a remake, and this is where we're gonna now just focus on Black Flag and discuss Black Flag Resynced, because remakes aren't always needed, okay? Let's be honest. And a remaster is even more insulting, personally, unless if it's, you know, a very, very old game and they are truly bringing like a HD package or something like that to it. I haven't got a problem with that. But, you know, when you see games getting remade like The Last of Us, you have to wonder, Is it needed or is it for money? But this is a remake, and remakes can be done very well because usually what it means is they don't just touch up the graphics, they fundamentally change the gameplay mechanics and systems going on to make it a better game. And when you think about it like that, this is why I'm excited for Black Flag, and from what I've played, it actually holds up very well because this game was already great. So when a game is already great and then they go back and make that good game even better, it's like, you know, they get to develop this game 2 times over, which is basically what they're doing, which means it just gets refined and refined and refined, and it becomes even better. Usually that's what happens if it's a good remake, and I do have to say that this is a good remake, which I'm so happy about. Not a slop fest like we saw with Bethesda, and just leaving the Oblivion remake to basically die with terrible performance. It's not using the Unreal slop engine, and goddamn, do I have to say how much I hate Unreal Engine and how it's destroying modern gaming. I'm gonna make a separate video, I think, about it, because it's just been on my mind so much. It's just terrible.
You can't keep getting away with it!
This is actually an engine that runs pretty well for the most part. Graphically, it's so good, so much better than the original. The fidelity that they've managed to bring now to the areas and stuff like that is just very breathtaking. The gameplay mechanics have been refined, from the hunting, whaling, you know, taking down those delicious sharks and taking their fins for that yummy yummy shark fin soup. You know, good quality times. None of it has been watered down. It's all still 100% here, but there's more systems on top of it now. More freedom. That's the thing I want to emphasize, that Black Flag Resynced is the same game, but with greater emphasis on freedom. For example, there's not any more points where you have to dive in certain locations. You can just swim anywhere you want and go underwater, which is pretty awesome, I've got to say. The open world feels more Red Dead Redemption 2-like now, with dynamic systems thanks to the weather changes that actually impact gameplay, gusts of wind that you have to actually course correct, thunderstorms that kick up the ocean and make things more dynamic and dangerous and just atmospheric. You know, stuff like this, the weather actually impacting stealth mechanics, and then just freedom within the level designs themselves. So for example, taking out a target now can be done in the traditional Assassin's Creed way, where you just go stealthily take out a target, but also it could turn into a proper full-on boss battle with a health bar, and it actually fits surprisingly well because it's not bloated combat anymore like the other recent Assassin's Creed games where they tried to become RPGs. It's got a whole, you know, like stripped back combat experience, almost Souls-like in a certain way, not really, but you know, it's a lot more deliberate is what I mean. Instead of just spammy abilities trying to be an RPG, it's much more deliberate, realistic combat where you can't just parry constantly like you could in the old game. There's a dedicated kick button, much more physical combat, but it is much more physics-based, where, you know, you can use your grappling hook, you can kick them, you can trip them up, and then if you do get an opening, then you can counter, which makes a lot more sense. It's much more slow, focused around parries, so it's its own unique blend of, you know, kind of a Soulsy combat system mixed in with a more traditional action-focused game, which just works so much better. Now, Black Flag is needed for modern-day Ubisoft because it was very close that Ubisoft was going to be completely destroyed and go bankrupt, because finally people were realizing that they're sick and tired of the Ubisoft design philosophy with how they structure their games. Now, you do have to remember that this is still Ubisoft, but it is peak Ubisoft, so it doesn't mean that they've stopped, you know, boring side missions and a lot of repeating content that you find throughout the world. That's still all here, but there's much more of a deliberate, but it's much more fleshed out now with a lot more mechanics, a lot more detail, and you can actually choose the content that you want to do. You're not forced to do annoying things anymore, like you know, following a target for ages, and if you mess up, it restarts. Now, you know, there's options to actually just fight your way out of a situation. The same thing for the modern day sections. You can skip all of that and just focus on the Assassin's Creed story. And then, of course, being a good remake, what makes a remake good is adding, like I said, to the original experience. And that's what they've done. They have actually added content here, and I've only seen some of that very briefly. And some of the changes are good, some of them are not. Some people might not like the fact that they've changed some character designs for a more modern day aesthetic, and stuff like that. Also, just some of them have lost their personality, and the writing can definitely be a little bit hit or miss with the newer content, I would say. It's not all bad, but there is definitely a difference between the original and some of the newer content with how it's written and stuff like that, which isn't too bad. But you can't pretend this game is perfect, because it's definitely not. Now, the biggest thing that I've seen personally is the janky animations, okay? The animations within combat sometimes are pretty terrible, almost worse than the original, and that's because of this new, you know, kind of physics-based system that they're going for. Some things just don't collide, animations break, stuff like that happens. Also, you do see occasional glitches with just NPCs acting like dumb classic Assassin's Creed NPCs. They've still never managed to nail that problem of making their worlds truly feel alive, like you would in other open world games, where, you know, the kind of side characters truly do just feel like side characters instead of like a living, breathing environment. You know, nothing will get close. Of course, I'm not expecting levels of immersion like Red Dead Redemption 2, where every NPC has their own routine and stuff like that, but it would be nice to see some of that A-life improve. And sadly, that's not really the case here. But it's all about the gameplay mechanics that they have fundamentally changed, adding to the ship combat. The way you can customize your ship and upgrade your ship now is a lot more fleshed out. New abilities, new crew members that add active and passive bonuses and stuff like that. They've also changed some of the stupid, you know, beginnings of the RPG mechanics that were kind of starting in Black Flag with how weapon damage is done and stuff like that, which no one really understood anyway. So overall, this is exactly what we need. This is what a remake should be. Going back, adding new stuff, but not destroying the original image. You know, when I think of a good remake, I think about Silent Hill 2, and now Black Flag is up there. The engine itself is pretty solid. Of course, they are implementing things like ray tracing and stuff like that, which isn't necessary, and of course that will destroy performance, but they aren't gatekeeping this behind, you know, some bullshit path tracing technology like some games. But the biggest thing for me, and other press have talked about this as well, is just how much more freedom it gives you within a mission. So now it's much more of that sandbox original Assassin's Creed formula that was so good in Assassin's Creed 1 and 2, Brotherhood, stuff like this. And that's what I loved. That's when I kind of stopped playing Assassin's Creed, honestly. And they've just added to that formula even more of, you know, you getting the choice with how you want to tackle the missions. Now, I think it would have been cool if they did add more, you know, like pirate mechanics, like the ability to raid villages and do some more darker stuff that piracy is known for. That would make this game a lot better, if you ask me. But they are definitely leaning into the piracy fantasy much more this time around. I will say that some of the animations do look a bit weird now that it doesn't kind of float together, because it's how they've done this new engine, so sometimes it can look a little bit stiff, but the overall world and just dynamic nature of these cities and little, you know, villages that you come across just feel much more alive and realized. And the fact that it's not stitched together anymore, you can just go out and explore and just hop from one island to the next, truly makes it feel like a proper pirate game, and that's what we've always wanted. But there are things that still feel kind of small in scale because it is an older game, like attacking forts and stuff like that. If they kind of made that more modernized and, you know, had a kind of more raiding mechanic with actual towns and stuff like that, then this would be next level. But for what it is, it's the original game, but better. They've changed some things that some people won't like with some story elements, but the writing for the most part is the same, some character design, and just the overall combat of this game. But fundamentally, this is the same game. And one of the main reasons Assassin's Creed Black Flag was so beloved in the first place is because, like I said in my review for that game before, it's a game that succeeds because it's a pirate game. It's a pirate game first, and then an Assassin's Creed game second. And I think if Assassin's Creed led, and I think if Assassin's Creed understood that with their other games, it would have made their other games much more successful, but instead they focus much more about RPG mechanics and fixating on this Assassin's Creed Templar storyline. This is a great game because there's not many good open world pirate games, and it nails that fantasy of being a pirate in the best possible way while still being a good Assassin's Creed game with actual stealth and a sandbox design when it comes to taking out targets. But the biggest thing for me that changes this now is the freedom, the sandbox nature. It almost feels kind of like a Hitman level in some regards. To me, this harkens back to the golden age of Ubisoft when they were still trying to be original with games like Beyond Good and Evil, which had some good thematic philosophical messaging in it about, fighting against a corrupt government, propaganda, and how basically media and information can influence the greater perception of what reality actually is. And it's all defined about the media that we consume, which is a scary thing that you all need to be aware of. And then also games like Far Cry 3 that nailed the formula, which had good, interesting storytelling, that made you the villain and reflect on your actions while still being a good FPS game. And then Black Flag, the peak of Assassin's Creed. So it's great to see this be a good remake, not just a remaster. So now let's quickly touch on where I think this is going to score with other reviews and the overall kind of big thing about the Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced reviews that most people won't tell you. So I do think the Black Flag Resynced reviews are going to be mostly positive. I'm talking about 9 out of 10, maybe some 8 out of 10s. I don't think I'm going to see it drop below that. What I think is going to affect people's score is the combat system. Some people are going to love this, some people are going to hate it. A lot of people are going to find it quite janky, and also some people might not like the new story changes with how they're kind of changing Edward's character into a little bit more of a soft-hearted person compared to the original game, and with some of the endgame stuff that I can't talk about. And again, I've only played a limited amount of the game so far, so I can't even talk about that stuff even if I wanted to. But for most people, I think they're going to absolutely love this game. They've just added more content and refined the content that was already there to begin with. Exploration being done a hell of a lot better this time around with a much more freedom, new weather systems that actually impact the gameplay, and just dynamic physics-based combat that makes it feel much more realistic and grounded, and just overall freedom, redesigning how boss battles work. But they have also kind of made it a little bit restricted in some areas where, that stupid classic Ubisoft design where if you're on a mission, you can't really go outside of the boundaries, which is goddamn stupid. But the overall sandbox exploration of this game has just been done so well, and it's much better and even more improved. I'm going to go into all the positives and negatives with my Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced review, the early access version, and list all of them out because I have a lot to say. But yes, I do think this is going to review very well, and most reviewers are going to be very happy with it. But again, I do think the main establishment like IGN and stuff like this will not truly give it what it deserves because of the state of the industry right now and how Ubisoft is perceived at the moment, and basically current day trends, what this game is doing and what this game isn't doing, more importantly, because it's not a modern game. Some people will have a problem with that in the industry, but overall I think this is going to be scored very well with gamers. There's not much controversy around this. It's not like they've suddenly changed all of the characters and they act completely differently. No, they feel very much like they did in the original, and storytelling is still very good here, probably the best Assassin's Creed story. So that is my Black Flag Resynced reviews discussion. Before my early access review comes out, I've talked a little bit about what I like, some things that are changed for the better and for the worst, and what the overall industry is thinking about this game right now. So stay tuned for my full review, which is out very soon. Thank you so much for watching, my wise ones. Please let me know your thoughts down below on Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, as I am very excited. Now, I've had some hours with it, but I am very much looking forward to putting a lot of hours into this game. It's one of those games that just truly make you wish for those times of freedom and discovery. And yeah, it's a great time. So let me know what you think, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day, my wise ones, and stay blessed.